having me today. So I'm getting ready to leave this morning, and my wife said, she looked at me, she goes, where are you going? I'm like, oh, I gotta go do a talk. She goes, well, I don't know who you're talking to, and I don't know what you're talking about, but make sure you tell them all that I hate that suit you're wearing. And I want them to know that. Okay? So just passing that on. So I work for MFS Investment Management, and I always have to start with a little story, a little joke, and it's about 4 guys, and these 4 guys would play golf together every Saturday morning, and nothing would ever interfere with their golf game, right? Now, the elder statesman of the group was 93, and the young whippersnapper of the group was 87. Okay? The other 2 fell in between. And it was this one Saturday morning, it was raining, and the elder statesman of the group, he said, well, boys, he said, I have an announcement to make. He said, I'm going to do it again. He said, do what? What are you going to do? He said, well, heck, I'm getting married. He said, married? Tell me about the girl. First guy said, is she beautiful? He goes, well, you guys know we golf together every week. My eyes aren't too good. I don't know. And then the next guy said, well, is she rich? He said, from what I can tell, the poor thing doesn't have 2 nickels to rub together. So then the third guy was thinking, what could it possibly be? He said, did she cook? He goes, she's never made a meal for me. All we had to do was go to the early bird special, and that's it. So he said, well, what's the deal? What's the story? He goes, boys, she can drive at night. So it's just a quick little story about priorities, right? And our priorities change as situations and circumstances change in our life. So my priority today to give you just a couple of thoughts about this really challenging concept of transferring wealth from one generation to another, which, you know, it's a lot easier said than done. Over the last 18 months, both of my grandparents have passed away, and they lived long, great lives into their late 80s, and they did pretty well. And I always thought that, like, my dad came from a pretty functional family until this happened, right? So this is all kind of at the forefront of my mind. I work for MFS Investment Management. Just a very brief history lesson. In 1924, the average daily family income in America was $5 a day. The average family, $5 a day, $25 a week, $100 a month, $1,300 a year. One stock of General Electric was $232.25. One share of AT&T was $121.25. So investing wasn't for regular folks like us. It was for the Carnegies and the Rockefellers and maybe the Floreses, but it wasn't for the Nolans, right? It wasn't for regular people like us. It was Massachusetts Financial Services that created this concept of the mutual fund, today known as MFS Investment Management, that made it possible for all of us to participate in our capital markets. And it's through participation in our capital markets that we plan for the dignified retirement we hope to have. We plan to educate our kids and grandkids. And what I want to focus on today, we plan the legacy that we want to leave when we pass. And so that's really what the crux of my next 12 minutes is going to be on that kind of that transfer, right? And conceptually, it's when you think about it, and the statistics support it, 85% of wealth transfer in this country, it goes awry, right? That's a nice way of saying it gets screwed up. 85% of the time, that transfer gets messed up. 68% of the time, by the end of that second generation, all the money's gone. And I'm sure that everybody here in this room, if they could transfer all their wealth to their heirs without paying a dime in taxes, but yet left your children in a situation where they couldn't talk to each other and couldn't be in the same room with each other, would consider that an epic failure, right? And so it's important that we consider how we pass it on and how we communicate, because everything comes down to communication.
Very excited.
Oh, here we go. I'm not that good at technology. So we talked about why do transfers fail? right? It comes down to lack of communication. Really, is the biggest problem, right? We don't communicate our wishes to our family, and we don't do the planning to avoid the mistakes that we have on the front end. So throughout the course of my remarks, we're going to talk about how important communication is. So, parents, right? 50% of people do not have a plan in place to transfer their assets from one generation to the next. Half the folks, right? So half the folks are saying, well, we'll just let it go to probate and they can kind of figure it out and do that. Now, of the people that do have a plan in place, some of them kind of scribbled it together on their own, right? When my father-in-law passed away 13 years ago, I was designated, because I was in the mutual fund business, right? I was designated as the family financial planner, right? And I looked at the plan, and it was on a yellow pad of paper, and it had lines and charts and all kinds of stuff going, and who gets what. And I knew that this guy that worked really hard throughout his whole life, right? He was the millionaire next door, right? He worked at AT&T for 30 years. He fully invested in his 401k. He drove a old model regular car. He cut his own grass. He did his own pool, right? I know that this guy, he worked pretty hard to accumulate a lot of money, but he did not pass that on in the most effective, efficient way possible, right? And it was because he didn't get the advice from somebody who had the training to provide that, right? So we were trying to kind of figure it all out at the end. People don't communicate the plan. So for those that do have a plan, they don't communicate it. And again, at the end, communication is the key to the whole deal. Heirs, what happens with the heirs? Well, they often fight each other. You get to the point where personal histories, past squabbles, disagreements among siblings of how people live and do things, right? It all factors in to the passing on of wealth. And it goes beyond money, right? It goes to mementos, it goes to personal items, things that people will want to get, right? This is something that again, we're just kind of laying out the issues that we need to think about while we're of sound mind and sound body, right? Surprises, right? Surprises lead to a lot of fights when people fight the plan, right? As I mentioned my dad's family here in the beginning, my grandparents had a house. It was worth $1.3 million, and I had one aunt that said, "Well, Mom said I could have it for $750," right? So the other 6 siblings were like, "Yeah, I don't know about that," right? And so when people are surprised, they tend to fight that plan, and so these are things that we need to avoid on the front end. And then lastly, lack of advice, right? People don't get advice. Sometimes 6 different siblings have 6 different financial advisors that are all giving them advice and say, tell them this and do that, tell them this and do that, right? I would say this, keep it all centralized, and then when everybody kind of gets them, they can go the direction they need to go. But it's lack of advice, right? People think they know, they don't get the proper advice that they need to get. So this actually is a pretty interesting chart. Those percentages are the percent of people who do not want to discuss these issues with their adult children. So you see the second one down the list, right? The second one on the list is your wishes upon death, right? People dealing with their own mortality, they don't want to do that. Nobody wants to talk about that. And then the last one is talking about money. The first one about your own mortality, but the last one, people don't want to talk about money with their kids because they're afraid. They're afraid of seeing greed in their children. They're afraid of maybe putting their children in a position that they don't strive to do the best they can because they know they're going to inherit some money. So this is really important that we all talk about this on the front end. Classic example, family cottage, right? A lot of memories made at the family cottage or wherever it is, the cottage, the cabin, right? But the more kids you have, the more likely that this one's going to get screwed up. Some kids, they want to get bought out. Some kids live 3 hours away. Some kids live a 5-hour flight away, right? The ones that live close, they think they have more rights to it because they got to do more maintenance to it on the way. The ones that live far away, they think that they should get to come whenever they want because they never get to use it, right? All of this stuff, kind of when we go back to what we started with of your children can't be in the same room with each other, right? All of this stuff is something that needs to be laid out on the front end, and I'm talking fast. So what can we do, right? We laid out some of the issues. plan to avoid mistakes. The first thing you can do is create a family map. And basically what the family map is about is identifying kind of where everybody is and who everybody is. Are there parents, living parents? Are there living grandparents? All these kind of issues. And then after that, identifying the legacy needs for each one. Who needs to be taken care of and how? And we have copies of the family map in the back. Documents, trust, will, power of attorney, durable power of attorney, in the event of incapacitation, healthcare directives, special needs trusts, right? This is all the stuff that we need to go through this process, and you know, as far as I go, I'm not only the Hair Club president, I'm also a client, right? I came to Flora as well to do that. I know we're not doing a commercial, but it's because these guys care, and they help me kind of work through that process of doing that and getting my stuff. This is the best thing not that slide. So what do we need to do? We need to make sure that we communicate, right? We need to engage our family members. We need to talk about communicating to them where the accounts are, right? If we have beneficial accounts on behalf of our children, I know there's some reasons not to tell them, but there's also some reasons to let them know too, especially for parents that are planning the college education of grandchildren, right? A grandparent may have some money set aside, and it's important to continue to communicate those things and educate. Family meetings, right? Really important when everybody is of sound mind and sound body to talk about this stuff. Again, we certainly want to avoid those surprises. So, if you don't take anything else away from me today, write down this website, familyloveletters.com. And again, everything is about communication. First, it's about the planning, and then it's about the communication of those wishes. And this is a wonderful way with lots of love and lots of clarity to communicate your wishes to those that you leave behind. And this will take you through an amazing process where you can just buy this booklet and kind of fill it out. And that's really what it is. It's a love letter to your family, letting them know where everything is. And it's everything from where all those documents are to where do you have a balance of frequent flyer miles or Marriott points or whatever, right, to make sure. So this is a really good idea to go through that. So again, I'm going to wrap it up. I think we talked a little bit about why transfers fail. We didn't have a heck of a lot of time to go into it that deeply, but I think we scratched the surface on why sometimes our plan doesn't go according to plan. Typically, it comes down to lack of communication. Take the steps on the front end. Get over your discomforts about talking about those tough subjects with your family, and just make sure that you communicate that when everybody is thinking clearly, because you know after a very emotional and stressful time, that's probably not the best time to talk about these things. So again, Sal and Jeff and everybody else in Florida as well, thank you for having me. I'll turn it back to Jeff. Thank you.